Today is Wednesday, and Wednesday is important to me because I almost went to Philadelphia, and I communicated with my employer about the days that I would not be able to work, while still keeping my job. Today was a snow day, or rather, I should call it a slush day. My day was made up of walking through the slush. I was going to breakfast because I failed to fall asleep again after my alarm woke me up, and I straggled out of bed and walked to the bathroom and then realized that it was a snow day from the sign on the door. So I was walking to breakfast and I saw this guy that I knew from a lunch conversation some time ago where I, interestingly enough, talked to another guy named Chris about what we will do in heaven. That was a very interesting conversation. It's not one you actually talk about with people very often. But anyway, this guy, his name is Mike. We walked to breakfast together and had our little small talk, which is very nice. I've started to appreciate now that I'm less wearied and more acquiescent to discuss how I am 50 times a day with people. And then after breakfast, I was going to chapel with my dear friend Marta and someone else. Oh, him and his friends. Even though I don't really know him very well, but whatever. He's a nice guy. And they decided that they would go out on the pond. Now, the pond is actually not frozen, although it does have snow on it, which makes it a very dangerous place to go when it's so snowy and cold outside. And the reason that they wanted to go on this pond is because there's a goose. I thought it was a very fat goose. Although, when it walked towards us, it looked skinnier, so I'm not really sure. Someone said it's amazing what a little bit of walking can do for you. Just lost some pounds. Anyway, so they proceeded to throw snowballs at the goose after proceeding gently, walking, treading on the ice with a very cautionary air. So that was funny. I watched that for a while. What is really interesting to me, actually, is how I labeled this guy, Mike, as nice. Ooh, like that. Anyway, I think it's very intriguing that we base our interactions off of people that we don't know on whether they are nice or not. Now, niceness merely means that the person is agreeable to be around, but it doesn't actually denote any sort of good qualities, per se. See, I think that we shouldn't be nice. Now, I'm not saying that I'm suddenly going to turn into a mean person or anything, but the way I see it is people sometimes need to hear the truth. And sometimes the truth isn't very pretty. We were reading this book called Jesus Mean and Wild, and I realized that all the time he was snapping at people. You are so impatient. You are fools. You are hypocrites. Why can't you get this? It's not about status. It's about furthering the kingdom. It's about service. It's about this and that. Oh, I'm going to make a whip and drive you out of the temple because you're defiling my Father's house. Jesus wasn't very nice. In fact, it's kind of amazing that people flocked to him the way they did, considering that he was pretty harsh with them. Although, he looked on people with compassion. Now, a lot of times when we say, you should exhort someone lovingly, what you mean is you should tell them that what they're doing is not acceptable in a nice way. I don't actually think that Jesus did things in a particularly nice way. He did it with the goal of love behind it, but he wasn't necessarily, grandfatherly, perhaps. Although, being loving does not mean you're nice. Love seeks the betterment of its object. So when you love someone, you want their ultimate good for them. That's where the term tough love comes from. Parents have tough love for their children when they don't allow their child to have some privilege which should be revoked because their child disobeyed the rules. But the thing is, tough love really is the essence of love. Say I'm in the library and people are talking loudly. Now, the library is the only place on campus that I can depend on to be a quiet place. Without it, either I'm stuck with my room or someone else's room or whatever, but none of those are neutral zones in terms of working. All of them could be possibly categorized as social places. Thus, even though it's fun to work in the jam in Java, a lot of times people are carousing in there and yoo-hooing and having a great time, which means that if I'm trying to read something from Justice, like, Gutierrez wasn't that bad, but Rawls, yeah, that took me like an hour and a half to read, and I don't even think I finished it. I should be able to say to somebody, look, you need to be quiet. This is the only place I can work. Or I probably wouldn't be assertive enough to say that, even though I'm all huffy right now. It's things like that. See, we're expected to do these things in our relationships with our close friends, boyfriends, family, boyfriend, you know what I mean. But apparently we have to be very civil and nice to strangers because they're strangers. I think a policy of honesty would be very good for this country. In fact, for the world. Not to say that if one country doesn't like another, they should just bomb them, because that's the solution to all our problems. But I do think that we should all be a lot more honest with each other. Not for our own good, but for their good. See, if someone learns that they can use the library as a social place, they're going to have bad boundaries. I mean, if they can't learn to just be quiet in a library, what's going to happen in other areas of their life that are much more important to adhere to certain social mores? Well, that's what I have to say on the subject. I'm sure there's a lot more. No pun intended. But that's really the core of the issue, I think. We should all be a lot more honest with each other so that we can learn to communicate well our needs and proper conduct. And by thus doing so, we will have a flourishing society.